It's great to be joined by Super Bowl winning coach, car aficionado, and one of the most beloved people in the city of Philadelphia, Dick Vermeil. Dick, thank you so much for the time.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
We're thrilled to get to talk to you. We're going to start talking cars, which gets back to an earlier part in your life, and then we'll get through your life story a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the Philadelphia Concours Elegance. Comes up July 17th. Tell us a little bit about it and your involvement.
It's a benefit for cool cars for kids, okay? Genetic children born with genetic problems, centering out of CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Dr. Ian Krantz and his group started this campaign of raising money specifically for children with genetic disorders 4 years ago. And they worked very hard at, beside working for a living doing what they do, they try to raise money passionately for children that really need some help. That, you know, a lot of times all the charity monies go to these major problems for, you know, major diseases, and diseases like childhood genetic problems get overlooked a little bit. So Dr. Ian Krantz and his group are trying very hard to raise money to supplement the money they get from CHOP. And they do a great job. And Simeon Museum is just a great place.
You've been involved since the inaugural event. What's so special for you about your being able to participate?
Well, my wife and I have a special needs granddaughter born with genetic problems 28 years ago. Beautiful young lady, and doing well thanks to Dr. Krantz and his staff. And we like to support because they support and have done such a wonderful job, not only for our family but all families. You know, so it's critical. You know, and the Simeon Museum is a huge, big secret in Philadelphia. It's one of the finest auto museums in the world, and recently voted as such. And it's a little hard to find sometimes because it's located at 628 Norwich Drive. That's 6825 Norwich Drive, and it's over there in that airport area complex, and it's just a wonderful museum.
Well, and this is a throwback for you. It's always fun when we learn we're going to talk to people to learn about their lives. You were a car guy from the start. Your dad was a mechanic in the back of the house. I saw you say you never saw him without his hands dirty, and you almost thought you were going to be a racer. Tell us about growing up and how football wasn't really the thing.
Well, you know, when you grow up in a little town of 1,800 people, and I was born in my great-grandfather's home here in Calistoga, and my dad loved Calistoga, so he settled it, and he turned around and turned the garage, the old building behind the house, into a garage and a way to make a living for the rest of his life, working on farm equipment and friends equipment and winery equipment, and all these kinds of things, and I grew up in that environment. His hobby was auto racing, sprint car racing specifically, and in fact, I have restored two of his old race cars, and one of them has been in the Simeon Museum from time to time. A beautiful place to display it. But that's how I grew up. So I grew up wanting to go in that direction, you know. But along came a football coach to the high school, 130 kids in the high school, and he told me halfway through the season, you know, if you wanted to, young man, you could play college football. Well, no one had ever told me that before. So that was exciting. So I went on to junior college, and then went to San Jose State and played football there. And it sort of inspired me to become a football coach rather than a mechanic and a race driver. Thankful for that motivation, believe me.
Well, it wasn't just the race car, but you mentioned that your grandfather also was involved in fixing equipment related to wineries.
Well, my grandfather Vermeil made all our Vermeil wines, you know, from the Freddie Annie Vineyard, which we still get our grapes from the Freddie Annie Vineyard, okay. And we don't own the vineyard, but we pick the grapes from the Frediani to make our variations of wine in the Vermeil wine business. And my great-grandfather in those days made wine from those grapes, and my brother and I grew up helping him do it. So that's what created the interest, really.
And somehow you get sidetracked, and you begin a coaching career. When did you know that coaching was going to be your thing, was going to be your passion, as well as wine and everything else that you did? But for this long period of time, that coaching was going to be your passion and your career?
Well, I think really it was when I finished college and got my master's degree, and I did my student teaching, and then got a coaching job as an assistant football coach and head track coach at Del Mar High School. And I loved so much being an assistant football coach. And and working with the kids and the fascination with the game. And then the next year I was hired as a head football coach at Hillsdale High School in San Mateo. And the passion for the game and the kids that play it just kept growing. And I finally said to myself, I don't want to teach in the classroom or in the PE class. I want to coach football full time. So every time I got an opportunity for a new job, which was offered to me, I took it. That meant we moved an awful lot, but it ended up putting me in the NFL in 1976. So I don't regret any move that we made.
What was it like to coach with all the people that you've coached with along your coaching career, starting from people like George, or being recommended by like George Allen and people like that?
Humbling. It made me realize how little I knew about the game. And I've been around so many fine coaches. Bill Walsh was a personal friend that we developed a relationship at San Jose when he was a graduate student, when I was there as a student and player. And, John Ralston, Tommy Prothro, Chuck Knox, these guys, Jim Mora, all these people that I was surrounded by and working with. They just, I was like a sponge learning from all these wonderful coaches that already had experience, So, I'm so grateful for having had that exposure to these wonderful men.
So Bill Walsh, you meet as a graduate assistant at San Jose State. He ends up getting you connected with George Allen. I enjoyed an anecdote you said about George was a fanatic for detail, and he put a sign on everybody's desk. If what you're doing now isn't making a difference in winning and losing tomorrow, why are you doing it? Can you talk about what you learned from George Allen and how that experience shaped you going forward?
Well, I think probably the most obvious thing is you evaluate every possible detail that will help you win until you find out that it doesn't help you. And then you move on to the next thing that might help you. I mean, one time I traveled all through the preseason studying the Baltimore Colts tight end, Jim Mackey, the big All-Pro, Hall of Fame tight end, because George Allen had a hunch that he could give away some of the offensive plays. And I traveled, of the 6 preseason games, I traveled 3 or 4 of them to see him play personally, as well as come back and give a report. When I got back, I got in there and says, Coach Allen, I've done every possible study I can do, and there's just no conclusion. And he looked me right in the face and said, Coach, that's great. The conclusion is there's no conclusion. We'll move on and find something else to study.
Did he literally send you out on a wild goose chase?
Oh yeah, it wasn't. He didn't think it was a wild goose chase, but the fact that after all the analysis of every little thing, it found out there was nothing we could bet on that was worth utilizing in a defensive game plan against their offense. So his statement was, great. The conclusion is there's no conclusion. Let's move on.
So did you ever do that to one of your own assistants?
No, I really didn't. I did not. I think we did a good job of detailing preparation, but I tried not to get steered in a direction that probably wouldn't provide any opportunity improvement. You just you move on quickly.
So you go from the Rams to UCLA, and obviously we could talk about your coaching time there, but you were there with another coaching legend in John Wooden, and unlike previous coaches who had been there, you sort of embraced what he represented as opposed to being intimidated by it. I saw you say he could say more in fewer words than anyone you've ever been around. What was it like to be around John Wooden?
I had such admiration for him, but I wasn't intimidated by him. I was like I just wanted to learn from him. So I very seldom walked by his office that I didn't go in if he was sitting there. But remember, he was retiring, and he used to come to our team breakfast during training camp and sit next to me at early morning breakfast, because he would walk the track every morning a few miles for exercise, come in, shower, and come to our training table, and he would sit next to me. And I felt very comfortable around him. In fact, I started inviting him to, in the off-season, the football staff meetings, and we would record his meetings, and we'd have 10 football coaches firing questions at him, and he had such a distinct way of answering a question precisely. And I don't have that ability. maybe not as nearly as smart as he was, but he could condense things into understanding statements that made it seem very easy and easy to utilize in your own philosophy.
You know,
Like, I'll give you an example. One day I was complaining to him about we lost a couple real great players to USC in recruiting. And he looked me right in the eye. He says, no, Coach, he says, don't worry about those guys that you lost to USC. They're always going to have better players than you. Just make sure you do everything you possibly can to make those players that you have on your roster the best they can be, and everything else will take care of itself. I never forgot that. I applied that to every player I ever coached from then on.
well, you know, that leads me to the question. You mentioned before the word preparation. You've been known for so long for the amount of preparation you do and how well your teams are prepared. When did you realize that was going to be the secret sauce to your success?
Well, I think I learned that initially, through John Ralston at Stanford. I was working for him 4 years. Bill Walsh was on that staff. Jim Moore was on that staff for a while. I was around good people, and I always admired the people that worked the hardest. And I always respected the fact that those that worked the hardest were the best prepared. They just weren't spinning their wheels. And I just, when you get so deeply involved in something and so passionate about something, it isn't work. It's research, And I just got tied into details, and I didn't like to hear people make statements that I felt if I studied that statement he made, it was probably not true. So I used to analyze a lot of things assistant coaches made to determine whether that was really a fact or just an opinion. And there's a big difference. But when you detail your preparation, you start refining everything it takes to win and lose. And you also get to the point where you find out, there's a lot of variables that don't make a difference, and you isolate your efforts on things that really do make a difference. And so that was it. I think, recognizing when you're a young coach coming to the National Football League, you aren't going to outsmart the guys that are already going in the Hall of Fame, the George Allens and these guys, the Don Shula's, and all these guys, the Bud Grants, who were all very great coaches. And hey, I coached against George Allen then. You aren't going to outsmart them, but maybe you could outwork them as a young. Maybe you have more energy. Maybe you can supply more energy and motivation to your roster, your staff, the people in the building. And maybe you can be a little more infectious in those kind of attitudes. And so that's the approach I took.
Well, eventually you decide to leave UCLA and to come to our town. What was it like for you to make that decision? I understand that you were reluctant to make the decision, and you ultimately decided to do so. Why did you decide to make that leap? And what was like the final impetus for you to say, that's it, it's time?
Well, I talked to two head coaches in the NFL that I worked with. I talked with George Allen, and I talked with Chuck Knox. And they both said, listen, very seldom does anyone in the NFL call up on the phone and offer you a coaching job. It may never happen again. And yes, you're happy at UCLA, and you've just won the Rose Bowl, but the NFL is all football. It's all football. And it's not summer jobs. It's not recruiting. It's not these things. It's all football. And if you don't take this job, you may never get that kind of opportunity. And that really made sense to me.
So you come in and you take the job. The Eagles had 9 consecutive losing seasons before you got here. They didn't have a first-round pick until 1979. And people think you're this guy from California who looks good and doesn't necessarily fit the city. In fact, you were a blue-collar guy with a hard work ethic. Can you talk about how you were actually the perfect fit for the city and the team at the time?
Well, I don't know if I came here as a perfect fit. Hopefully, as they learned me and I learned the community, I became a fit that would work, But, Philadelphia has a lot of wonderful people, and they get up every morning and go to work. They go through the grind. But, in working in Philadelphia, what I learned is if you're honest with them, tell them the truth, admit your mistakes. They do the same thing every day they go to work. And you develop a relationship. And because of that relationship, I think is part of the reason that we decided to stay in the Philadelphia area and continue to raise our family there. You know, we brought 3 teenagers with us when we came here. And you know, God bless Jimmy Murray. He was the lead salesman in this whole approach. And Jimmy, I remember Jimmy saying to me, you know, Coach, you come to Philadelphia and turn this thing around, they'll treat you like you're John Wayne. That's what he said.
Was he right?
I never forgot. That's what he said to me. But
he was definitely right, because I drove over here to the studio today and I saw you on a billboard and heard you on the radio. So I definitely know that they haven't forgotten who you are, Coach.
It's amazing. Thank heavens for Jimmy Murray. God bless him.
All right, so Coach, I got to talk to you just about one specific thing. As a kid who grew up in North Jersey, at some point I had to watch a game that's been known as the Miracle at the Meadowlands. What was it like for you to be on that sideline, and what was going through your head when that happened?
Well, first, I didn't see the initial play happen, the first part of it.
I wish I couldn't either.
I was taking my headset off, and in fact, I was talking to Chuck Bednarik, who was standing next to me, and I was so disappointed because that's the first time the Giants would have beaten us, because we beat them twice in '76, we beat them twice in '77, and we already beat them once in '78. You know, so we had a streak going, and all of a sudden they're going to beat us, and they played hard and they'd earned the right to beat us. But all of a sudden, this play happens, and I look up and I see Herman Edwards bending over, scooping up the ball, and heading toward the end zone. And oh my God! Of course, everything went wild. You know, everybody went wild. And I looked over to the far sideline and saw the New York Giants staff, and I had a little empathy, I think, for them. I said, "Oh my God, how would I feel if that happened to me? My God!" But anyway, it went from empathy to jubilation in about 25 seconds. Okay. And I remember after that game going in to the hotel room, Leonard Toast was in Houston, Texas, having a heart valve replaced. That's where he had to go. Dubecki was doing a heart valve replacement. And I was on the phone with him in the locker room. And Leonard Toast said, "Oh my gosh, you almost ruined my heart valve operation."
Well, if that happened, the Super Bowl season probably didn't help very much too. Everybody's talked about the Super Bowl, and I'm more curious, what happened in the Super Bowl with the Eagles and that career prepare you for what you would eventually experience when you came back later with St. Louis and with KC?
Well, let me tell you this about the Super Bowl. Having been there twice, winning is much better, much more fun. But I'll tell you this, you don't appreciate a win as much as you should unless you've experienced the loss, okay? You know, whenever you lose a Super Bowl game, there's going to be defined reasons by the media, the public, the TV. They're going to have defined reasons. No one wants to buy in the fact that you just got beat and you didn't play well that day. Unlike Major League Baseball or the NBA, which are going through now, a best-of-7 series. It's a best-of-1 series. And I didn't do a good job of coaching that day. My offensive team did not play well that day, and the officials did not do a good job that day. You know, the long broken play that really broke our back that they created, their offensive left tackle grabbed Carl Harrison, who was going to sack the quarterback, by the face mask and pulled him to the ground. And it wasn't called, and a big play resulted, and it broke our backs. But, you know, when you're -3 in turnovers in the game, you have very little chance to win, especially in a big game of that magnitude. You know, so we just didn't play well. But I know this. It takes the same thing to go to a Super Bowl and lose as it does to go there and win. You've got to get there. And my Eagle team actually did more with less to get there in 5 years than my Ram team did in 3 years to get there and win. You know, when we got to Philadelphia, we didn't have first, second, third round picks for 3 years. Okay. And in St. Louis, we had a first round pick each year, a second round pick each year, a third round pick each year. We had all the draft picks, plus we had free agency. So we were able to take the old fashioned way of building a football team, put it together with the new mechanics and have the advantage of the draft and free agency, and build and have a great football coaching staff. And we were the oldest coaching staff in the NFL, okay? But we were also the most experienced, and in some ways maybe had the most wisdom. Bud Carson was initially the defensive coordinator who coordinated my staff and taught them the schemes, and then Peter Junta and John Bunning took it over when he retired. And then Mike Martz comes with me, and these kind of people, Dick Corey, we had Kenny Iman. We had wonderful coaches with a lot of experience, and it really helped us get over the top. But we didn't have the same tools when we came to Philadelphia. But I respect, if not more, that group and how they did. And to get there and lose, and the group that got there and won. I'll tell you, those kids worked. They worked hard. And they remain very close to this day.
And that was going to be my next question is, you have such a close bond with so many of your players from everywhere you've been. How do you maintain those relationships, and what makes the relationships that you have between coach and player different than what you see a lot of today?
Well, I learned when I was a high school coach that players win games, not coaches. My first year at Hillsdale High School, we lost a championship by one game, okay? I was coach of the year my first year there, okay, in the league. The next year, we win the championship with most of the same kids, okay? The next year, we only won 4 games. All my great kids graduated. They went on. And that made me realize right there that players win games, not coaches. It's a coach's responsibility to provide them the opportunity, the training, the schemes, and the discipline and the motivation to take advantage of their own ability. But if they don't have the ability, I got a lot smarter when Marshall Falk became my running back at St. Louis. All of a sudden, I got smarter when we found out Kurt Warner could play like he could play. I got a lot smarter when we drafted number 1 pick in the overall draft of Orlando Pace. They're all 3 of them are in the Hall of Fame. I got a lot smarter. So I decided I was going to dedicate a lot of time to develop the total player as a person as well as a player. And in doing that, you develop a relationship with people.
So you
develop a relationship.
Sorry, Coach.
And in doing, find out how much joy those kind of relationships bring to you as a leader.
So you go from the gridiron to the grapevine. I've seen you say producing a good wine is like producing a good football team. You have to have patience, good people who know what they're doing, that you could trust and are committed to doing it right. Tell us about your venture into the wine business.
Well, we started making wine as a hobby with my old Napa Valley friends. On the Edge Winery, Paul Smith, Mary Sue Frediani. They had a little small winery, and I asked him about making a Vermeil Cabernet in honor of my great-grandfather, Jean-Louis Vermeil, and my dad, Jean-Louis Vermeil. And they could sell it, and I would buy it and pay retail price. So we started in their little winery making 150, 200 cases a year in 1999. And heck, we win the Super Bowl in 99. And all of a sudden it became easy for them to sell those 150 cases or so. And we kept doing that all the way up to 2007. And some very good friends of mine in New Jersey came to me and said, you've got the process, the people, and some of the knowledge. Let's turn that whole process into a business. And I said, okay. So 2008, we turned it all into a business. We don't own a winery, but we custom crush. From now on, we'll be custom crushing, meaning we use their facility. We use Mending Wall Winery facilities, led by Thomas Brown, our consulting winemaker, who's world famous, and Andy Jones, our winemaker. And we get the grapes from the Frediani Vineyard, which I have since I was born. And my great-grandfather on the Italian side of my family owned a portion of the Frediani Vineyard. In the next hour, I will be out there, okay, in the Frediani. I'm 10 minutes away from it right as I speak to you. With the Frediani, same family. And so, it's been a struggle because we've had earthquakes, 2 major forest fires. We lost all our red grapes this last year in the 2020 fire due to smoke damage. So we won't, in 2022, we won't be selling any Vermeil red wines. We'll be trying to carry over our 18s and 19s that we have left to service our club members. And we have over 115 club members in Philadelphia alone.
All right. Well, now we're going to all run out to. We're going to have to run out to stores to find it.
Yes.
Before it's gone.
Not in the store. Very little of it is in it. the story. People making low volume, high quality wine cannot afford to sell their wine wholesale to retailers. You've got to sell it direct. Like, we have over 350 club members now, and it's growing. We have a tasting room in Napa. I've been doing virtual wine tastings. Joe Medichek at PNC Bank allowed me to do a virtual tasting that he organized, and it was a big business event for us at Vermeil Wines. And I go on and explain the wines, the details, and talk football with people. And it's been fun. It's enhanced our business, and it's also enhanced our wine club. So things like that have gone. And this is the first year, 13th year, that we're in the playoffs. We're in the black for the first time. So, we're certainly not geniuses in business in the wine world, believe me.
So, Coach, we've really enjoyed this interview, and we got to end it with this. You have made yourself so much a part of this community and the work that you're doing off of the football field. How important is it for you to give back to the community and to use your platform for things like the charity event? And if you could just talk about it one last time, and we're going to continue to promote it.
Yeah, well, I think it all stems from being grateful. First, grateful for the opportunity, grateful to the people that gave me the opportunity, and grateful for the support of the community, and grateful for what Philadelphia really can provide. There aren't many children's hospitals in the world, let alone Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So Cool Cars for Kids event, like on Saturday, July 17th, starting at 10 o'clock for $25. You can come in there and make a contribution to helping children with genetic diseases, helping people that are really passionate about helping other people. You see some beautiful cars. It's an emphasis day on Corvettes. There's a rally that starts early that morning, and they drive all through from Chester County on into the museum. There'll be beautiful Corvettes there, but there's a world supply of beautiful old cars with video screens that tell you the history and show you the races they were in, and that it's a wonderful afternoon for families. And again, it's a 6825 Norwich Avenue there in Philadelphia. It's a little hard to find, but really a worthy cause, a worthy stay, and very educational for young people. It's a great day for mom, dad, and the kids. The Eagles are going to have their mascot there. Some cheerleaders there. Chicken Pizza has some foods there. So, it's a fun family day.
We look forward to finding you there, Coach. We thank you so much for the time. Can't wait to talk to you again, and best of luck with everything you're doing.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to promote Cool Cars for Kids.
Thanks, Coach.
Bye-bye.